Hey geeks, welcome back to another exciting episode of Rockin The Code World with dotNetDave. I'm David McCarter. I'm glad you're all back. It's been a month. I've missed you all. It seems like I was just telling Simon. It seems like it's been longer than a month since the last show. So I'm really excited about the show and this show, and I'm really excited about the topic too. So let's get into it. So my special guest today is a Steve Stedman. I think if I count correctly, Simon can tell me if I miscounted. This is his third time on the show, and usually, Steve is a database expert. Actually, he has a database tool that I have to use if I'm using SQL Server because it just is an awesome tool. But we're not going to be talking about that today. We're going to be talking about getting to retirement in tech, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, some more. So this is show 104. Wow, it's a big number. I hope we all had, everybody in America at least, I hope you all had a great July 4th holiday, and everybody is safe, and you didn't die in the sweltering heat that a lot of America is dealing with. Not me, of course, because I live in San Diego, but a lot of America. But summer is finally here in San Diego. I was worrying that we're going to have a crappy summer like last year, but it looks like it's turning around this year. So beautiful day. It's been beautiful outside here, not too hot by the beach where I live. And so if you want to come visit me, you're more than welcome to. I'm always willing to hang out and show people why I love San Diego so much. Anyway, so let's get to the show. Um, Wait, I thought I had another. Did I not unhide that? Anyway, I think I screwed up one of my slides. Anyway, what I want to talk about is promote is on September, I think it's September 7th, I'm going to do a panel show, very special panel show, where we're going to be talking about this subject, which is basically giving advice to younger developers. Uh, so when they hit, 30 years of being a software engineer like myself, they're more prepared than I am because, I didn't get any advice. I had no advice when I was a younger software engineer. I think part of that was because, software engineering was still relatively young back then. And so there wasn't a lot of back information. But now software engineering's been around a long time, and a lot of people have come through this industry. A lot of people have retired, and I want to prepare the younger developers to not struggle as much as I am right now in this career, being around this long. So, anyway. So that's the topic for today, and that will be the topic in 2 months in September too. And I hope you'll come back in September because I have a special panel of experts from around the world, including two from Microsoft, and we're going to have a really great discussion. And so I hope you come back. Um, Sorry, I'm on the wrong screen. So I want to promote my code performance book. It's out. It's still on sale this month. So if you want to get a copy of my brand new code performance book on Microsoft .NET 8, I hope you do, because the price will increase at the end of this month. So if you're holding off getting a copy, you can save some money if you buy right now. So I hope you go do that. And I continually to do work on performance. Actually, something, and I'll be writing more about this. I have some articles already done and will be coming out soon about how I've been using Copilot to actually make my open source project, Spargin, faster. And there's one method in the upcoming August release that has the performance has increased over 1,500 times on one method, just using GitHub Copilot. So I thought Spargin was really fast, but I'm finding out that there is room for improvement, just like in any code, really. So anyway, I hope you get a copy of the book before the price goes up, and I hope you stay tuned to my website when those articles come out. Also, My coding standards book is out. I hope you get a copy of that. Came out the early of the beginning of this year. We all need coding standards, especially the code I see definitely needs coding standards. As a contractor, I see the worst code ever. And so that's why we need standards. So I hope you go pick up a copy. And you can even get a hardbound copy too. Someone bought one. I didn't think anybody would. I just basically did it to give away as prizes and stuff. But someone bought one. Huh? Who knew? So I hope you go get that. Oh, I did have the slide. It was in the wrong place. So anyway, oh, no, I'm getting all mixed up. So yesterday was my 30th year anniversary of speaking in public. July 5th, 1994 was the first time I spoke in front of a group of people, which was terrifying to me. And it was for a while. And I know some of you out there who have seen me speak or have seen me in India or other conferences, and you see me speak in front of people super easy, and it seems to come naturally. Well, it didn't. It was a lot of hard work. When I started speaking, I hated talking in front of people. It was my second biggest fear, and I avoided it at all costs, even when I was in school. And but I was able to turn that around. And so this first article that came out yesterday is kind of an overview of everything that speaking in public has taught me in the last 30 years. And in the article, I hope you read it, is I state that my career would have been much different if I didn't learn how to speak in front of people and communicate properly, from developers all the way up to CEOs. And I share a story about, a time when a CEO confided with me, and, we had to change direction for the company. So, and I don't think that would have happened if I didn't learn how to speak and I wasn't a teacher at a university and, all those kind of things. And so, this article and the articles coming out is hopefully there so to inspire you all who don't speak, to give you encouragement to do it, because they will enrich your career and your personal life, as I also state in the article. So I hope you go not only read that article, but stay tuned to my website, because I have other articles done and it will be coming out in subsequent weeks. So I hope you go check that out. All right, so I want to bring Steve back on. He's the founder of Stedman Solutions, LLC, where he and Stedman Solutions team has been supporting his customers in SQL Server environments for the last 9 years. He's also he has 34 years of SQL Server experience with SQL Server and other database platforms. He's the creator and been primary developer of the Database Health Monitor. That's the application that I mentioned a couple minutes ago that, when I'm using SQL Server, I have to use that monitor. It's so helpful. And he's been doing that for 13 years. So welcome, Steve.
Hey, David, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, welcome back. Third time.
And congratulations on your 30 years of public speaking.
Thank you.
I can remember back to the beginning and how terrified I was too.
So. Oh my gosh, I was so terrified. And in that first article, I briefly shared my experience of the first time I spoke at an actual conference, which was a local conference here, put on by a local computer magazine that we used to have here back in the 90s. And they asked me to speak at their annual conference, and I was terrified. My stomach, I had a hard time getting out of the bathroom at the event, because my nerves was just really bad, and
yep. Oh yeah.
And so
I think anyone who's spoken for long term has been there in the beginning, right?
Yeah. I know a lot of people speak as long as I and still get, nervous and afraid sometimes when they speak. Luckily, I don't have that anymore. Thank goodness. As I stated in the article, like the only time I get a little bit nervous now. It's the first time I speak in a new country because I'm not really sure, how the developers react to things there, right? And
Oh, sure.
yeah, yeah. So there's actually a picture of me the first time I spoke in India, trying to mentally prepare myself. I'm sitting on the floor trying to, you know, get rid of the nervousness a little bit before I spoke the first time in India, right?
Yep.
And so yeah, it's been a long career. I mean, a long time I've been speaking, but for me, it's been really rewarding. Not only like I said for my career, but also my personal life too. So
Yep. Yep. And from my perspective on this, prior to this interview we're doing right now, almost every time that I've presented publicly has been on tech specific
yeah.
topics. SQL Server, how to make them more performant, and
Mhm.
different things with queries and all that. So I'm kind of stepping out on a limb here, doing a little
Yeah.
bit different topic this time.
Yeah.
But it's something that's kind of near and dear to my heart at this point as well. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
not only do I write about different kind of subjects, than other than just tech, but kind of tech related, adjacent, right?
Yep.
Um, I've found it harder to write or talk about those things, right? Because, you and I are tech people and we know our tech stuff, and so we can, spit that out the top of our heads. But when it comes to other, more soft skills, I guess you would say it's harder, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Especially because we don't know how it'll be received, right? And so, I know we usually don't get a lot of people watching live, but if you are watching live, please let us know that you are and where you're watching from. But if you're watching this recorded, please tell your younger developers to watch this show because they need to, think about this even when they're a beginner. And like I said earlier, we'll be talking about this on the panel show in September also. So
Yep. Well, shall I jump into
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about retirement then? So, I
yeah.
mean, this is one of those things that, I mean, I guess I should say early on, I didn't have the best planning.
Mm,
I didn't know what I was doing. And I think that I'm at the point where I'm in my mid 50s and I'm trying to get to the point of one day getting to retirement. I don't think it's going to be this year. I don't think it's going to be next year, but
mm,
hopefully I'll get there one day. And
mm,
I've seen too many people in tech get to the point that uh, they just keep working indefinitely, and to the
mm.
point that once they finally do retire, they have less than a couple years left before they're no longer around. And
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that that makes me sad when I see people who've worked so hard for so many companies over the years to help them succeed. And I
Mm,
think that uh, the other end of it is you've got people who have like stock options that have just hit it big. I mean, I
yeah,
remember
yeah.
in 2000, I was working at Amazon and I had stock options and I'd worked there like 7 months and my stock options were over $1 million in value. And uh, then came March of 2020 and they went all negative before I could even cash in a single one. And I've had a couple other employers I've worked for where I've had stock options that I thought, ooh, this is a lot of money. If this actually goes through, I could retire one day. And then,
Yeah.
well, a lot of things happen along the way with companies.
Yeah, it did. And this is of course a longer story that I'll be sharing in articles, but in the beginning, when I was a beginner, one of the things companies I targeted for a few reasons were startups, right?
Yep.
Because I learned a ton working at startups, right? And I tell people if you really want to get experience quick, work for a startup because you have to wear many different hats, right? But
Yep.
the other reason I worked at a startup is because I wanted to hit it big, right? I wanted the company to make something awesome, and then somebody buy the company, and all that stuff. Long story short, I only work for one company that I actually have stock options that are worth as much as toilet paper, right? And literally, well, the company's not even around anymore. So, but
Yep.
so my whole dream of hitting it big in startups didn't work, But
Yeah.
that was my plan, and I had if you hear me today and you hear me, in September, I had a plan, but those plans didn't work out.
No.
None of them did, to tell you the truth, because like I wanted to be retired at 40, then I wanted to be retired at 50, it, and I'm still working, right?
Yep.
And so I don't even know when I'm going to be able to retire. I kind of like what you said, I'm going to be working until I'm dead, basically, right?
Yep.
And that's not the way to enjoy life, to me at
Yep.
least.
And then the other side of it is like when you do get to retirement, what is your, I guess, level of living that you're going to be at? I mean, I see
Mm,
people who they have a pretty good lifestyle, and then they get to retirement, and then they move into a really tiny apartment, and they
hmm.
don't have the funds or the budget to go do anything, and they kind of
Yeah,
spend the rest of their life just sitting in a tiny apartment uh, that isn't really the retirement life I would want. I'd almost rather be working than just doing that.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Well,
and
they tell you that I'm experiencing this right now with my neighbors, right? Because, I live in a very expensive area of San Diego, and I have a lot of older neighbors that I'm getting to know. One, I even walk her dog when she's golfing, and I'm hearing this from them, right? They are on fixed incomes, right? And they don't have a lot of money. They don't go hardly anywhere, and that's not what I envision my retirement for, right?
yep.
Yeah,
And that term fixed income, I mean, that just terrifies me. I mean,
yeah,
I don't, I mean, I don't ever want to get to that point. And I
no,
know you look at things you've done, and I mean, I'm at the point where I kind of look at, well, yeah, I could retire if I sold everything and bought a little tiny house somewhere,
right.
uh, and didn't have the budget to go do stuff. But I want to thrive. I want to go and do more. And I think
Hmm.
when I talk about some of the things here that I'm trying to do or that I've done, it's not to boast. It's more to sort of share so
Hmm.
that people can learn and improve along the way. Do it earlier than I did.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
for me, I think probably around 2000, I guess, after that .com or yeah, the .com bubble burst. And I was
yeah.
working at
Bubble
Amazon, and
burst.
then I changed
Yeah.
jobs after that. Uh, I picked up this book from Robert Kiyosaki on Rich Dad Poor Dad, which talked
Oh, yeah.
about a lot
Hmm.
of investing strategies
Hmm.
and is all about like recurring income and buy real estate and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So I thought, oh, I'm going to go do this. And then in the beginning, buying real estate's a tough thing to do, and I think
It is.
it was, gosh, 5 years later that we bought our first rental property, and then uh, from there it's grown. But even in doing that, that's kind of a long-term investment when you're going to go
Hmm.
buy rental properties, because
Yeah.
usually, unless you've got a pile of money when you're getting started, usually buying a rental property is going to put you in a position where you might be not profitable for a couple of years. And
Hmm.
we ran into that. And actually, the first few rental properties I bought, I was in a position where it was actually more difficult from a cash flow perspective
Hmm.
after buying them. Of
Hmm.
course, I didn't really listen to what Robert Kiyosaki said in his books on that one, but I tried. And
Hmm.
then, but eventually things turned. And I had the saying that, like with real estate, time eventually heals all mistakes. And as long as you can survive for that amount of time. And I
Yeah.
think today, I, I'm at the point where I've got a handful of rental properties, and some of them are doing better than others. But it's something that I look at that as my way to get to retirement one day, is to buy more of those.
Hmm.
And I think that that's one of those things that I would really encourage people to do when they're younger is get into a rental property if you can,
Yes. Yes.
And I think that, I mean, my son's 25 and 27 years old. My two boys are now, and they're at the point where you talk with them and you do the math and figure out what it would take to get a house,
Hmm.
and they're making good money,
Hmm.
but it's tough to get started with that first house. But once you get that first house down, I mean, then it's easier to go forward after that.
Yes.
And I
And
think, yeah,
yeah, in America, even buying a house is getting harder and harder, right? And so many young people now don't have the means to buy a house. You know, people that are the same age when I bought my first home, they can't afford it. They're moving in back in with their parents and stuff, and it's tough. And so we have to you have to plan for this, right?
Yep, absolutely. And then, but the flip side of it is rents are getting so high now, you
Yes.
could almost say
Yes.
people can't afford to not buy
Yeah.
because, and I guess that varies a lot too on the time and the interest rates and things like that. I mean, interest rates have been high the last couple of years,
Yes.
but if they turn around and come back down, I mean, that's the time to look at how do you get into that first house.
Right.
And I think
Right.
that for me, that's been a good long-term investment. And hopefully by the time I retire, I'll be at the point that I don't have a fixed income, that I have enough rental income for the long term, that I can continue whatever lifestyle I have today, if not better, going
Yeah.
forward, rather than having to cut back.
Yeah.
The other side of it is looking at planning and kind of planning for when things go wrong. And, you know, we're all going through our careers, going through life, we're all going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And there's going to be points in time where you get stuck with some financial issue that you've got to come up with some cash right now. And a lot of the times you end up putting that on a credit card. A lot of people do.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times that gets to the point that a couple of those happen and suddenly you've got $40,000 or $50,000 on credit cards.
Yeah.
And you're in a world of hurt at that point. I mean, when I was about 30, I think I had $50,000 or $60,000 on credit cards from mistakes I'd made, and I worked with that. I became so averse to debt, to credit card debt, that today, if I have a credit card charge that sits more than 2 or 3 days on my card before I pay it off, I go into panic mode almost.
Yeah. Well, you know, I had the same issue that you went through, and actually, I still think I owe some money if they ever catch up with me. But you know, one thing that because I tend to learn things the hard way, you know, I got into that, and I haven't had credit card in, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. I think I haven't had a credit card. I won't.
You learned.
Yeah, I learned. I got rid of them. You know, they're way too easy to say, oh, yeah, I'll pay that off next month or whatever. And then, like you said, stuff happens, right? And so, you know, one of the things, you know, I didn't plan on talking about today, but live within your means, right? You know, if you can't afford to pay cash to go see Taylor Swift, maybe you shouldn't be going, right?
Right.
And, you know, stuff like that, you know, that's not that important, right?
But I think it's one of the things that Dave Ramsey, he's one of the investment or columnist, or he has a radio show. He always talks about living within your means,
right,
so that you can live beyond your means down the road.
Right. Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I made that mistake early on. I mean, I got my first tech job and I was making more money than I knew what to do with at the point in time.
Yeah.
And then you go buy a new vehicle
Mm-hmm.
and finance it. And then you go charge too much on credit cards. And suddenly you realize a really big percentage of your income is going to just pay off debt at that point.
Yeah. And
that's where, for me, to get to the long term to one day retire, I have to categorize everything into two categories of what's good debt and what's bad debt.
Mm-hmm.
And good debt, in my opinion, is debt that makes you money.
Yes.
A mortgage on a rental property that
Right.
you might be paying X, but you're making X plus 10% off of it.
Right.
Where bad debt is when you're buying toys, boats,
Mm-hmm.
skis,
Yeah.
things, toys like that, you know, stuff that doesn't make you money. That, now, I'm not saying you shouldn't do those things,
Sure,
but you should do those things within what you can afford.
Yes.
And keep it to the point that and my rule is, if I'm going to buy a toy, meaning anything that I guess if I'm going to buy anything that is not an investment that's going to make me money, I don't want to use debt at all.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
And I mean, car loans, I'm afraid I stay away from those.
Yeah.
And what that meant was that I went from a lifestyle where I had a new vehicle every 4 or 5 years to now, for a while, I was driving a 15-year-old vehicle, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but it was paid for.
Right.
And then I upgraded, and next I'm driving a 10-year-old vehicle, but it's paid for.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't always have to have that newest vehicle. And I think that, I mean, one of the guys I work with almost went bankrupt because of too much spending like that.
Yeah.
And we were able to work together. And that's one of the things I really enjoy, is working with people like team members in order to kind of help them understand these things earlier on in their career.
Yeah.
I know I saw something about Henry Ford when he first started the Ford company making cars, 100 years ago now, roughly. One of the things he did was he worked with his employees, he worked with his team members to help educate them so that they would be stronger in their financial backgrounds, not just to be good employees, but to also be stronger financially. And that's one of the things I like to do. And just being able to see how people can improve or basically change their way of living to a point that they're not digging a hole of disparity every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really hard because, I can't speak for every country, but in America, we're bombarded constantly to spend money we don't have, right?
Oh yeah,
It's
90 days,
constant.
same as cash, right?
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
it's every commercial is trying to sell you crap you don't need. To me, pretty much every single commercial on TV is stuff you don't need, right?
Yep.
And the reason you see those commercials at every commercial break is because you don't need it and they're trying to convince you to need it, right? And so one thing that I've been doing for a long time, and so to back up a little bit, I've never been super materialistic. I've never been big into toys. I've never had a boat, I've never, none of that stuff, right? I never had a super fancy car. I had one that's nice and gets me around, right? I don't need, $100,000 car or even a $40,000 car, right?
Yep.
So one thing that I do, and it doesn't matter, if it's, a new piece of camera gear because I'm a photographer, or even a new guitar, I want things, but then I stop and say, okay, I need to justify this besides just wanting a cool guitar, right?
Yep.
What am I going to use it for? When am I going to use it? And if it's just for me, then maybe I should just hold off, and wait and get something that I really need if I'm going to be playing out with a band or something like that, right? So, and even computers, I'm down to 3 computers now, which sounds like a lot to some people, but I used to have like 5 or 6 computers in my house, right?
Yep.
And so
the question on that really comes down to, are those things you have to own because they're going to help you with your job or help you make money or something like that, versus are they just a bunch of toys?
Right.
And I think too often I've fallen into the too many toys category over the years as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I guess one of the major turning points for me was 9 years ago. I was working as, I guess my title changed about 6 times in 6 years when I worked for that company, but I was working as the chief technology officer for a company, and I got let go. It was a layoff of one, they called it. And
layoff of one.
Yeah.
Never heard that before.
Well, they wanted to call it a layoff because they couldn't admit that they wanted to fire me because I didn't really fit into their mold very well,
Yeah.
And I at that point I found out, well, I'm not a very good employee. I'm really more of an entrepreneur or business person rather than so I went and started my own company. And the thing I learned was never start your own business and announce it on April 1st, because April Fool's Day, everybody thinks it's a joke. So even if you have to delay a day, don't do it on April 1st. But I've been going for 9 years. And for me, that was a game changer, going into business for myself. Now, it was my second time trying it, because 10 years before I tried to do that and I failed horribly because I didn't know what I was doing. But 9 years later, Stedman Solutions now has 10 employees.
Wow.
And we're doing a whole lot of work with SQL Server, and to the point that we're probably going to be looking at maybe adding a couple more in the next year. But what was the changer on that was getting in the position where I could be the business owner rather than just the employee working for some big corporation, was that it put me in the driver's seat. I had a lot more control over my future. I had a lot more control over what you could do with taxes, even things like that pile of computers you bought, 6 computers, whatever it may be. Well, those are being used for business, then they're a business expense rather than if you're buying them just to help your employer, they're not necessarily a business expense at that point.
Exactly. Yeah. But, So you brought up something that I wanted to talk a little bit about today because I don't think I'm going to have the chance in September, and that is, so a long time ago when I was interested in going consulting, one of my consulting friends said to me, well, if you're going to do consulting, then you have to have at least 3 months of cash in the bank to live, right?
Right.
And so I've been through this, unfortunately, a bunch of times now since I've been mostly consulting since 2012. And I could tell you that should be at least 6 months, and it doesn't matter if you're consulting or not to me, because, I've seen ups and downs in this industry, and you never know when you're going to walk in one day and your job is gone, right?
Yep.
And if you don't have if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're screwed basically, right? And if you haven't kept up your connections, like with recruiters and things like that, it's going to take a long time for you to find a new job. And so I would say, I don't know if you agree, but I would say you have to have at least 6 months of operating capital in your bank at all times, right?
Yes. Yep.
Call it the rainy day fund, right? Because it's almost inevitable you're going to be laid off.
Yep.
I should do a poll if you've ever been laid off, and I bet you the majority of the people have been, right?
Yep. That's a good point.
And
yeah.
the other thing that I've found out the hard way is unemployment runs out. So what are you going to do when unemployment runs out?
Yeah.
Right?
And also, I mean, unemployment isn't even that great.
No, it's not. It doesn't even pay my mortgage, right? But
Yep.
it helps, but it runs out. It dries up, because
Yep.
I didn't
So-
never realize until now that we pay into it, and when we use it, it's gone, right?
Yep. So with that, I completely agree with your 6 months number, 6 months of expenses. Now that doesn't have to be 6 months of what you would need to be going on vacation and stuff like that.
No,
That's
no,
6 months
just
of
living.
survival money and
Right,
what it would
right.
take to get by if you lost all of your income. And
Right.
I think that, as a consultant, I absolutely agree with that. But honestly, as an employee, I think it makes just as much sense too.
Yeah, it does.
And it's almost like the bigger the company, the more risk you have of maybe a whole division being laid off or something like that. I
It
mean,
happens constantly at Microsoft and other companies, right? It
Yeah.
always happens.
I worked for a company, gosh, years ago. They had, I think, about 900 employees, and they laid off about 750 of them in one day when the company sold, and they didn't want all these employees.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was one of those where everybody thought everything was great, and then
Yeah.
suddenly about 750 out of 900 were unemployed.
Yeah.
And I think that it was fear and panic at that point with the
Mhm.
team members and people I knew. And that's where, if you could have that buffer, and that 6 months doesn't all have to be cash in a savings account. I mean, it can be in CDs, or it can be in
Right.
other things that
Right.
you can get to within that 6 months if you need
Right.
it.
Right.
But having that really changes a perspective on life, meaning that if that did happen, it's not the end of the world tomorrow.
Right.
So
right.
the other thing that I learned in doing that and running my business was the first time that I went into consulting, when I failed, I basically got one client that became big and squashed all my other clients on my time. And then that one client came to an end, and you're
Yeah.
no different than having a full-time job at that point when you lose your
Right.
job.
Right.
So I made the rule in my consulting practice that I would never have more than 25% of my income coming from any one client.
Yeah.
And I violated it a couple times with a little bit here and there on, like, for short term, but generally I try and spread it out so that if something does go bad, hopefully it doesn't go bad with all the clients. It just maybe goes bad with one. And that helps reduce the risk there a little bit as well.
I've worked for consulting companies that did exactly what you did the first time, right? And
Yep.
I even warned them, going, look, we can't have everything. We can't have all of the income coming from Microsoft, because I know what happens every 5 years of Microsoft. They do a reorg and
Yep.
everything goes to shit, right? Oops, sorry, Simon. And you're left, and that's exactly what happened to the company, right? What I told them was going to happen happened, right?
Yep.
Because I've seen this over and over again, and And yeah, you're completely right. You have to have more eggs in the basket, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think one of the keys in getting to retirement one day is being able to understand where you're at. I mean,
Hmm.
a lot of people don't even know where they're at, how far away they are, or if they could or couldn't retire. And so one of the things I started doing in 2012 was I put together a spreadsheet, and in there I tracked a number of uh, data points, basically. And maybe I'm too much of a database guy, is why I put it together this way. But basically tracking overall net worth, basically what are all your assets minus what are all your liabilities, and being able to see that number grow. And if you on a month to month basis just record that, and
Hmm.
if you see it go negative, then you got to look at, well, what did I do this month? Was this a one-off event that I'm going to fix next month, or are we trending in the negative?
Right.
And if that's happening, then that's putting you further away from retirement at that point.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it's growing, it's putting you closer to retirement every day. And then what is the overall monthly cash flow? And how much of that comes from regular income versus how much of it comes from passive income? Where regular income is what you're going to lose when you lose your job one day,
Hmm.
or retire from that job one day. And
Hmm.
then passive income is what you've got coming from investments, from real estate, from intellectual property, from whatever book revenues, things like that.
Right.
So
Right.
how much can you grow that passive income to get it to the point that you don't have to rely on the regular income?
Yeah.
And then what overall is your monthly expenses and your debt to income ratio? And I try and track those. And then when that passive income exceeds what your monthly burn rate is, then you're at a point where you don't need that day job anymore,
Yeah.
and you could retire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Retire early, which is, was my goal,
yep.
which
And
didn't happen.
yep. And I've seen too many people work into their 70s
Yeah.
or later, or they retire and then find out that they've got to go take on a job because the retirement didn't do it. I
Yeah.
mean, I
Or
know a guy
drive
in his
Uber or something. Yeah.
a guy in his 80s retired that we know locally here, and now he's working delivering auto parts. The
Hmm.
local auto parts store, he runs them out to all the shops, and
Yeah.
uh, that's not how I want to do retirement. I'd rather
No,
keep
me
doing what I'm doing
neither.
today rather than going to that type of retirement.
Yeah.
So really understanding those numbers and being able to analyze it and track it on a monthly basis, and then kind of year over year, look at it and set your goals of how do you get to where you need to be.
Hmm.
And when you look at it that way, you need to look at, well, what are the things that if you do end up on a fixed income, what are the things that aren't going to be fixed with that? And like
Right.
part of that comes into defining your goals and what's your lifestyle aspirations and
Right.
how much do you really need to achieve that?
Hmm.
And then what are the things that are going to continue to be more expensive in retirement? And I mean, you think about things like, well, food, insurance,
Healthcare. Yeah.
healthcare,
Yeah.
housing.
Hmm.
And if you get to that point where you think you could retire today and you do your math, but it doesn't account for those things increasing in
Hmm.
5 years,
Right.
then it might
Or
be that you're
10. Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
or 10. It might be at that
Yeah.
point, that's where you have to go back to work.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I mean, retirement, I would hope is a one-way transition for people,
You would hope.
not a,
Right.
yeah. All right. And I think the
But
key
that's.
there,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, the key there is really to figure out, well, where are you at and where do you want to be, and creating a roadmap to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And then,
And
and that brings up, what I was just thinking, and that is, something else that, I'll share a brief story of this is, so I've lived in San Diego most of my life, ever since I've joined the Navy, and anybody watches this show, I love San Diego. I love the weather, to me, San Diego's the best city to live in, at least far as weather goes in the entire country. And quite frankly, I never want to leave San Diego, right? Because I love the city so much. But, back in 2006, because I remember this vividly, I started realizing I'm not going to be able to retire here. You know, San Diego is so freaking expensive, and California as a whole, right? Where do you live? I forgot.
Northwest Washington.
Yeah.
If you're in San Diego and you jump on I-5 and drive
Yeah.
north until you hit Canada, I'm at
Yeah.
the other end,
Yeah. Yeah.
just south of the Canadian border.
So
So
so when I realized this in 2006, in that summer, Microsoft flew me up to Portland to not only speak but to play in this band with with another Microsoft person, and I really liked the area, and so I came back later in October to start looking at property. I spent 2 days with the real estate agent to look at property. So the reason I'm bringing this up is, you know, you might really love where you live now, and you live where you do because of either you love the area or that's where all the work is or whatever. But one thing you should think of is, where do you want to live in your retirement that you can afford, right?
right.
Because I
Yep.
can't afford this. I don't know how most people can, to tell you the truth. And so where can I go to get the most value out of what money I've saved or I have in, real estate and things like that, to last the next 20 or 30 years or whatever I have left, right?
Yep.
And so that's something else you need to think about is, yeah, you might like where you are now, but where do you want to live when you retire that's affordable, that you can afford, right?
And that might be a really tough decision.
It
I mean,
is. Yeah.
4th of July, just a couple days ago, we were barbecuing, and a buddy of mine dropped by, and he's mid 60s, and he's at the point where he's getting really close to retiring.
Mhm.
And the only place he's figured out that he can afford to live is to go and buy a place in Panama.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's Costa Rica, other places you can do similar things like that, but it's a very different lifestyle than what you might have living in your hometown today, living in San Diego.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know a lot of people, move to other countries, Mexico, other places like that. Even I know most of you probably haven't heard of this country, Mauritius, but I spoke there twice. And, it's an island country. It's kind of like Hawaii, but, off the coast of Madagascar. And so the second time I went there, the two people who run the conference were kind of trying to convince me I might like to move there, because Mauritius is actively trying to move tech into their country, right? And
Yep.
they even have a town there called Tech Town, which is nothing but tech companies. And
Wow.
but so, one of the hardest things, at least if you're looking at going to a different country, is the visa and how they're going to allow a foreigner to live there, right? So when this couple was trying to convince me to move to Mauritius, I learned, or they told me about these condominiums Mauritius has, where if you buy a condominium, you instantly get a 10-year work permit, right? So
Oh, yeah.
so they're trying to convince you to move to Mauritius out in the middle of freaking nowhere, but by enticing people like that. And other countries are doing the same thing, right? Mauritius is not the only country that does this. Lots of other countries do the same thing.
Yep.
And so you might have to move to a different country. And what does that, if you want to last another 10, 20 or 30 years, and what does that entail? And what are the hurdles you have to go through to even do that, right?
Yep. And then if you do that and you get into your 80s or 90s, what is the healthcare option available for you in that retirement?
Right.
And it might be that it might not be what you're looking for. You never know.
Yeah. And I mean, I'd want to move to a country that has like more of a universal healthcare thing, just because, America has just totally messed that whole thing up. And, but I think about that because I am older, and healthcare is incredibly expensive. And I see how many health issues the older people in my complex are dealing with, and everything they go through. Right. And
Right.
I'm going, oh man, is that me in the next 10 or 20 years? And how am I going to be able to afford that on a fixed income on retirement, right?
Oh yeah. And I think the dream of hitting the internet startup with the stock options has come and gone if we haven't hit it yet, right?
Yeah. I don't think anybody should believe in that pipe that pipe dream anymore.
Oh yeah. There were so many times.
I think we learned our lessons with the internet bubble bursting. That's where I learned my lesson at least. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. So I guess, I mean, with this, it's one of those things that if you're younger, if you're just getting started in your career, think about it now
Mm.
and think about what can you do to build that long-term passive income somehow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, my experience has been real estate is a good way to do it. Building a business is a good way to do it. And uh, building up different investments that you can be making money off of your money rather than making money off your labor is another way to do it.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that and to get there, though, there's managing debt. And if you're in a position today where somebody says, well, I can't get there because I have so much credit card debt or I have so much debt on my car or those kind of things, uh, Dave Ramsey talks about the debt snowball, which is a pretty cool deal where
Mm.
they say just pay the minimum on all of your payments except for the smallest one, the
Mm.
easiest one to pay off, and then pay as much as you possibly can on that small one until you get to the point
Just keep
that
eating away at it. Yeah.
eating away at it. And I mean, I've done that a few times, and it's an effective way to do things because once that small one's gone, it's easier to pay the next one down and
Mhm.
easier to pay the next one down. And
Right.
unfortunately, I'm so adverse to debt. I mean, as long as the debt doesn't make me money,
Mhm.
credit card debt today. That I mean, I don't have to deal with that anymore. But
Yeah.
getting there has been a challenge over the years. And then having that emergency fund, that 6 months, like you talked about. Uh, I think that a lot of people look at like consulting versus full-time FTE positions,
Mhm.
and they say, well, I don't want to do consulting because FTE position is more stable.
No.
Well, in my
No, it's
experience,
not.
that's not the case.
No.
I've had multiple companies with layoffs where
Yeah.
you thought everything was groovy, and then all of a sudden, half the company's unemployed. Or in
Yeah.
my case, on my
Yeah.
last time around, I was the one that was being laid off, just one. So,
Yeah. Well, the reason I live where I do, about a mile away from the beach, is because I used to literally work like 3 blocks away, right?
yep,
And when I started working there, when I was still more of a beginner, I hate commuting more than anything, and so that's why I bought this place. Um, but now I forgot where I was going with that. The commuting, nah, it'll come back. Uh,
yeah,
but the other thing I want to bring up real quick, and that is kids. Now, you and I both have children, but mine are older now. I have grandkids, and and believe me, I know how hard it is to have kids and be a younger developer, and living paycheck to paycheck and barely making it through. Believe me, I was there. I did it for a very long time, but you know you still need to work on this even though you're dealing with those struggles, because it you need to start working on it right when you start getting a full-time job, your first gig, right?
yep.
Yeah.
And I look at that, and I think that if I could have started with the focus I had when I was mid 30s, if I could have
Mm.
had that same focus in my early 20s, I'd probably be retired by now.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
But I didn't know what I was doing. And I think that picking up books, reading more on different topics on getting there is a great way to start. And then take those things and figure out how can you do that in your own life. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's and sadly, America does a very, very poor job on teaching kids this, like in high school and college, right? I mean, the only class I went to in high school for financial stuff was learn how to use a checkbook and stuff like that. Nothing about saving, or, nothing like that, right? And I think, that is a big problem in any country that doesn't teach kids that, right, when they're in teenage years, so they can start working, on their nest egg, when they, get out of school.
yep, yep. And I think
Yeah.
it's one of those things that, let's say you went and built this whole curriculum to teach kids financial education.
Hmm.
I think it would be a hard sell. I mean, I think it would be an awesome thing to have, but I think it would be a really hard sell because at that point, that's not what kids are thinking about. It's almost like the school system has to have something where it could just be
Has to be
part of the
mandated.
curriculum. Yeah,
Yeah.
it has to be
Yeah. Yeah.
mandated. And I think that, I mean, with the school systems today, we're hardly getting what people need to be able to
I know.
read and write out of it almost.
I
So
know. I know.
yeah,
And,
that's a tough spot.
when you were talking about this, one of the other things I was thinking about was, because, whenever I see a problem, I try to figure out how can we, make this better for other people. And so one of the things I thought about when you were talking was, well, maybe we should start having conference sessions on this. But then I thought, no conference is going to pick that up, right? I mean, it's I doubt very much that any conference is going to actually have a session about that. But I think it's important. I think it's important for us to worry about because we're not taught about this in school. And so, how do you get the message across, right? And so, I hope that episodes like this one in September, and I know Sean Wildermuth was on .NET Rocks recently talking about the same subject, and so we need to start talking about this more and sharing what like what you've done. Start sharing this more with others to encourage them. And with that said, because we have to go in a minute, but so since you have been working on this for a while, what books do you recommend or websites do you recommend to go to?
Well, I think the fundamental one that changed my outlook on it was the Rich Dad Poor Dad from Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah.
And then what is it? Dave Ramsey's Money Makeover, I think is the name of it, or something like that. That was a really good one. And then it's just reading countless, for me, business books and learning how to understand the financing side of it. And I guess the other thing is working with good professionals like accountants and lawyers, people who know how to answer those questions. So when you say, well, is this really true, what I read in this article? You can run it by your accountant and they'll know. So
yeah. And I until he retired last December, I had a really great accountant that really, helped me, tell me things I needed to do that I didn't know, right? And so, getting an accountant, it costs money, but I think they're definitely worth it if you find a good one.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that, what my accountant charges is certainly worth every penny that I pay him.
Mine too.
So,
mine too. Yeah. I never complain about paying him money because he makes me money in the end, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I probably have to let you go. Is there anything you want to finish up with real quick?
Oh, just measure what's important on your success along the way, and just keep on trucking, keep on going, and you'll get there.
Yeah.
What was the date again on that forum you're doing in September?
I think it's September 7th. Is that right, Simon?
Well, I can look it up. I just want to make sure that
yes.
that I tune in for that one. Uh-oh, I think we clicked something wrong.
I hit the wrong button.
Yeah, I've done that before too. It's
Oh, you dropped by mistake. Yes, I dropped by mistake. Sorry about that, Simon. I'm sorry, what were you saying when I dropped?
Oh, just I want to make sure I tune in for that one because I want to learn as much as I can along the way too.
Yeah, so. It's September 7th. It's going to be a longer one. It's going to be like an hour and a half. I have 4 people. I'm waiting for a response for one more person, and people that I really like in this world, and I know has a lot of experience in this area that can bring a lot to. I mean, I wish the show was longer, but we can't really do that. But I want to get at least, and maybe we'll do more of these. I don't know, but I at least want to get the ball rolling because I just want to put the idea in younger developers' brains because no one put it in my brain, right?
Yep.
And so
same,
I want to.
Same here.
Yeah, so I want to encourage people. Don't be afraid of being older in this career, but you need to plan for it.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I guess I just want to finish up with thank you for having me on the show. I mean, it's awesome. I appreciate it, and
I really enjoyed this.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been great talking to you again. I'm glad you picked this topic because it kind of sets up the September episode, and And I have to tell you the truth that, I'm just not blowing smoke when I say I have to use your tool when I use SQL Server. I
Oh,
mean,
with Database Health Monitor,
yeah,
I mean, I totally understand it because even though I built it, I have to use it because it's so many shortcuts that I don't know, that it takes me too long if I don't use it.
yeah. Well, that's kind of how the way I feel about my open source project. Yeah, I could write all that code in projects, but why? I've already written it. Why just
Yep.
not reuse it from experience and testing and all that stuff, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
So,
thanks so much. I hope you have a great rest of the weekend. I don't hang out after the show anymore, but I hope you have a great rest of the weekend. And if you do watch live in September, please make comments while we're talking.
oh yeah, I'll keep an eye out for it and I'll see what I can do.
Okay,
All
great.
right. Well, thank you, David. Have a great day.
Thank you so
Yep.
much. See you next
All right.
time.
Yep. Bye.
Well, that was a really great discussion with Steve. Like I said, this subject is really important to me because I am struggling, big time right now, and I don't want to complain about it. What I want to do is find a way to help other developers, to not struggle like I am right now, and lots of other people. I'm not the only one in this boat, luckily. Like I mentioned a little bit ago, other people are starting to speak up about this. And this is the first time I really remember people talking about this. And so I hope this spurs more and more people so we can help more and more developers, plan for their retirement, whenever that is, right? Whether you're older or younger, you're not going to be able to retire if you don't plan. It's not going to happen magically. Unless a company forces you, I guess. Yeah. All right, here's the technical debt for today. See, Simon, can you switch the slides?
David, you're not sharing your screen because you dropped.
Oh, sorry about that. Uh, there we go. That's what happens when you press the wrong freaking button. Maybe that button should have, do you really want to log out kind of a message box? Anyway, I found this today. I really like it because I hate technical debt with a passion. And yeah, I don't understand why it takes so long to add a new window. Exactly. This is what happens when companies or teams put all of their problems into this bucket and never deal with it. You're going to have this happen. I've seen this happen countless times in my career. And so don't do that and take care of stuff. Don't put it in the technical debt waste basket. To me, technical debt is a cancer on a project. I have a meme about that, I think. All right. As always, I hope you help me help the kids in the slums in Delhi, India. Please help the Voice of Slum by donating anything you can to them or buying school supplies or clothing for their children, things like that. Voice of Slum does a wonderful job of helping, children in the slums in Delhi, India, get out of the slums, get clothing, training, school, fed. They feed them. They teach them how to use computers. Great organization, and if you've ever been in a slum in Delhi, India, it's heartbreaking. And so we really need to help these kids get out of that situation so they can have a better life. It's kind of something we've been talking about this whole episode. So I hope you go to voiceofslum.org and donate whatever you can, but please go there right after the show, because I know Dave and Chandy need your help desperately. All right, so the next episode is 1 month. Khalid's going to be back. I don't remember how many times he's been on the show, but he's going to be back. This will be his third or fourth time. I can't remember now. Simon is telling me, I think. 2 times. So he's going to be back on. I don't know what the subject is yet, but I'm sure it'll be great because I always enjoy talking to him. As always, please go donate blood this weekend. America's in a huge shortage, especially around holiday weeks like we've had this week. So please go donate. I donated last Sunday. Please go donate. I think my next donation, I'll hit 20 gallons of blood donated. I'm pretty proud of that. And so you go donate right now, because you never know when you're going to need the blood. So bank up the karma. All right. With that, please email me any suggestions, comments for the show, and I'll see you back in 1 month with Khalid.